day to you again, and welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us this week. I know that most of you, for those of you who are actually at home, you are still recovering from what really were wonderful independence celebrations, wonderful Jubilee celebrations. Of course, we still have some more to go this weekend. There are several after independence parties slated for this weekend, but just as you've been really good Guyanese citizens and you've been safe throughout these celebrations, I want you to continue to do that. So the last time I was here, I did wish you happy independence because, of course, the length of time and so on, the space between it. So I'm now trusting that you really and truly had a great one. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome all Guyanese home. Welcome back to Guyana, and we trust that you are having a splendid time. Today's conversation focuses on someone who's no stranger to Guyana. He has a very, very important role. Not only is his role now important, but his roles would have been important in the past. Of course, he's no stranger, none other than the Attorney General and, of course, the Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honorable Basil Williams. As most of you know, Basil Williams is also the chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, and the People's National Congress Reform is one of the major parties in the government, of course, in the coalition government. So it's my pleasure to welcome for the first time, since he is ascended to higher office, to this program, Facing the Nation. Even though he's not a stranger to the program, it's the first time in an entire year. That is to show how busy he's been, and he's already smiling because he knows how difficult it would have been for me to be able to tie him down to a conversation on Facing the Nation. Welcome to you, the Honorable Basil Williams.
Thank you, Malika.
Right, I should say welcome back.
Yes, thank you for exposing me. But as you know, it's always a pleasure to come here on the program with you. Of course, the year has flown basically, the year appeared to have been so quick. And I suppose it's because of the work that we have been confronted with and continue to be confronted with. But as I said, it's a pleasure for me to be here today, and I would also like to echo the sentiments that you have expressed with respect to the diaspora, the Guyanese, the thousands of Guyanese who have returned to celebrate with us our Jubilee, our 50th anniversary as a nation. And I trust that they would enjoy themselves thoroughly until they depart again to return.
Okay, great. Viewers, what I'll do a little later on as I continue my conversation with the Attorney General is open up the phone lines. I know you haven't had that in a while. Of course, you know the Attorney General can speak to you on every area in terms of governance because, of course, as I said before, he is not new to this. So I'll open up the phone lines as we go along. I know you haven't done this on this program in a while. Of course, you know the rules. Turn the volumes of your television sets down, be respectful, and of course the numbers are at the bottom of your television screens. Attorney General Williams, as we speak about your year and some other matters, how challenging has it been for you to take up this office?
Well, it is challenging, but I must say that, and you would agree with me, that many of us have been well prepared to take up office. Because, you know, we've been involved in years of struggle in this country to change this country and to free this country up and liberate basically the people of the country, and overwhelmingly to restore the rule of law in Guyana. You know that over the past 23 years, we have seen great disrespect for our law. And we've also seen, as I would term it, the proclivity on the part of persons who had occupied positions of trust in the past government to help themselves to the patrimony of the state and the resources of the state. And in fact, everything had degenerated in terms of transparency and accountability. And I believe I had said at the outset that the goal is to restore the rule of law and due regularity in matters which attend questions of governance in Guyana.
Okay. Sir, you talk about a number of things. Restoring the law and restoring justice system. Now, this is a sore issue. the conversation, the debate has been ongoing not only on social media but several places. We heard of several COIs, Commission of Inquiries, of course, investigations and so on. Guyanese at home and abroad are asking, when will we see these matters going further in terms of people being prosecuted? Is it a problem in terms of the sloth of the justice system?
Well, the justice system has its own inherent problems in terms of speedy justice. But in particular, with reference to the question of the results of COIs and audits, I suspect
Yes,
you're
sir.
referring to.
Yes.
These audits, they are a process, and a lot of instances they relate to boards or authorities that are, and these matters have to go to those boards and authorities to make decisions in terms of how they wish to proceed in relation to any individual that might have been fingered, for example, in any case. It's something that is engaging us. We wish to assure viewers that we are not at a loss in terms of what to do. As you know, in criminal matters, the police have to investigate and gather in the evidence. The prosecutors prepare the cases to go to the courts. And overall, the Director of Public Prosecutions is a constitutional person that has jurisdiction as to whether a charge should be brought or not. And matters are being processed, and when the time is ripe, I suppose, the matters would eventuate in a way that I'm sure that many Guyanese would approve of.
Okay. Attorney General, let's talk a bit about specifically the justice system. In your year in office, have you been able to make or see progress being made in the justice system? And one of the things I'd like to talk about specifically in this case, for example, the backlog of cases.
Well, let me say from the outset, we have been guided by our manifesto in many instances. We promised the Guyanese people that we would restore the rule of law. We have done those things. One of our very first acts was to restore the independence of constitutional bodies, if you remember that. So including the Supreme Court, and the commissions, Police Service Commission, Public Service Commissions, and the Judicial Service Commissions and the like, and various other bodies that were hitherto independent, but were emasculated by the last government when they created or converted them into budget agencies. Okay. In that way, they control their finances. You couldn't be independent if your finances are controlled by somebody else. So we have restored that, and so we have entities that are now performing in the way they were required and contemplated by the framers of our Constitution. They should. Of course, we've passed a significant number of pieces of legislation in furtherance of our own agenda and our own program. We have had many consultations on numerous bills that are very relevant if we are going to move forward in Guyana. In terms of the AML CFT regime, I could safely say that this government, and from the outset, President Granger had indicated a commitment on the part of his government, our government, to ensure that we comply with the requirements of the regime, CFATF, the AML CFATF regimes. So,
are we at risk, as you mentioned AML, are we at risk of being blacklisted? What really is the current situation for us?
No, but I think this government has brought Guyana back from the brink of economic misery and despair. When we inherited this government, as you know, the last government had been subjected to 3 public statements by CFATF because of their failure to comply with the requirements in relation to comply with certain recommendations that CFATF and FATF have. And I think within the first 100 days, we passed legislation that covered many of those recommendations. After that piece of legislation, we were assessed and we had 5 remaining. We dealt with those 5, and we now had part of 1 remaining. And so we're confident that we have satisfied the requirements of the remaining recommendation, and that we should be able to look at the question of exiting the FATF process. Because after the CFATF had issued 3 public statements against Guyana, in which they asked their members to take measures to protect their economies against ours, they then, I would say, after 3 statements, they then referred them to FATF. And the last government had to work out an action plan with FATF. And those items in that action plan we have now, I believe, fully satisfied. And as I said, to exit the process, we will have to have an on-site visit by the team from members of the ARRG, which is America's Region Review Group, that does the assessment before we actually go to a FATF plenary. So we're hoping that we could exit that. In the case of CFATF, that they have a regime too. And the last time when we would have participated in a CFATF conference dealing with its follow-up reports was in May. We came into government in May last.
Last, yeah.
And so we will have the opportunity for the first time to deal with the CFATF regime. We have actually sent up our report, our 10th report. We have been highly commended in relation to that report. And again, we believe that we have reached a position where we could seek to exit the CFATF, which is the 3rd rung of CFATF. The next rung is the 4th rung, which is the mutual evaluation. And so we hope we could exit CFATF also so that we could move on. But I don't think under this government we could say and conclude that we are nowhere close to being blacklisted.
Okay, great, sir, great. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, this is Facing the Nation. Today I'm having a conversation with the Minister of Legal Affairs and Attorney General, the Honorable Basil Williams. He is also the chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, which is one of the main parties within our coalition government. I also told you earlier that today is an opportunity. I know you haven't gotten this opportunity very recently. Today is an opportunity for you to call, pose your questions. The Minister of Legal Affairs and Attorney General can deal with almost any area that you can throw at him. All I ask, as usual, is that you be respectful, turn the volumes of your television sets down, and of course get to the point as quickly as possible. And we seem to be having a call, so I'll take this call before we continue with our conversation. Caller, good day to you.
Yes, good day, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, good day.
Yes. One of the
Caller, could you speak up for us, please? We can barely hear it.
the things there that caused the dollars to be moved on the $5. The parallel market now is moving with the big communes, big giant boys. Tigers, we call them.
Caller,
Yes.
we are struggling to hear you. Could you speak up a bit, please?
You not hear me? You hear me now?
Barely.
Yes. There are with 50% of the money in the road, with 45. 50% of the money in the road, and only about 50 to 60%. Because the big giants control the drugs, gold market, and they're the one who controls the sender around gold market. They control the entire system and the Chamber of Commerce. It's men like Ramsey is another parallel government underneath with a large sums of money. So this problem, when the goods gone up, for instance, a pound of flour was $89. Now it's $90. A corned beef, which was $5.99, has gone to $6.50. It means that the food market demand created by those parallel buys. So the answer is to change your currency. Bring it in, I tax you, give it to the public servants and the pension. And new money takes it. After that, you bring your money, you got to keep it. The Brazil border, endless tons of money, Guyana money there to do gold business. So you can't afford another four like that. You will be in problem. You see these boys, they link it with the drugs market. It's another force underneath the tunnel. You have to break the market with Chamber of Commerce. Don't boys men like black. You have to give the license open to African people to bring you food.
All right, caller.
Along the East Coast, so you have
Caller,
a balanced state.
thank you. I want to get some sentiments from the
The next thing, let me go
attorney.
on with the power system.
Sir, you have 1 minute to wrap up your comment.
You got a can with the power system from those people. They give you straight transformer.
Uh-huh.
You know, Basil, I'm electrical engineer, hydro power and electronics. They give you get can there with those straight transformer, Delta Star. They didn't put in what we call a power booster. The Guardian Eden, when you come to south, supposed to carry a power booster. So that 13,000 volts now will go right up and stable, and you'll get 240 while 110 at 20 without even using any boosting, stabilizing your house or any UPS. On the East Coast, Buxton, and Coast, that's the same thing. You can only get it from England. You won't get it from no other country, and you have to pay cash for it. Because I partner with those universities in technology, and I have to pay for the exchange of technology. They don't give me for nothing, you know. Even though that I will produce all my diagram and things. So it is costly to I go and buy money outside.
All right, caller.
Technology.
Caller,
Easy thing, man.
thank you
Because
very
you won't
much.
get people.
All right, Attorney General, he has said a mouthful there.
Yes, I was trying to understand the very first part of his contribution. The latter part, there's a new board for the GPL, and I can assure him that that new board would endeavor to address the issues that he has raised. The question of the parallel economy,
Yes, and the
that's
value of the
something that
dollar.
pundits have been addressing over the years. If we have inherited a parallel economy, then I can assure him that the new government certainly is taking measures to remedy the situation.
Okay.
We have a brand new Minister of Finance, very competent, very experienced in these matters. And so I'm sure that we'll be able to hear from him on
Yes.
this question of the parallel economy. I don't propose to be a specialist in it, but as you know, we have to address the whole question of our economy and questions of inflation and hyperinflation and all of that, because everything is tied up. Also, the question of our public servants and their wages, etc. So it's a big issue, and I'm sure that we have the people with the competence to address those issues.
All right, sir. Even viewers, the phone lines are still open. You can call. But, sir, while we're waiting on those calls, one of the things I'd like to raise, this is to come back a little closer to your area, even though you did talk about the investigations and the boards and so on, that this has to be a proper process. One of the questions floating around out there is, will we see any action at all being brought against alleged misuse of funds by the former Attorney General?
Well, the misuse of funds that you're referring to, I take it, is in relation to the missing
Yes.
law books and
Yeah.
the computer parts, etc. Well, as I had said earlier at the previous press conference, when I entered that office, staff brought to me documents to show that books were authorized for payment, but the books were not reduced into the possession or custody of the ministry. As a result, those vouchers that were shown to me were under the hand of the permanent secretary at the time.
Okay.
And the recourse and advice was to send it to the Auditor General, which was done. That took some time, and upon inquiry, the Auditor General indicated that the former President Ramatar, in fact, had written him in relation to that matter, in which he said he had an oral agreement with the former Attorney General to the effect that they would use the state's money to purchase these books for private use by the former Attorney General. And that really is the situation that we have, you know. And one doesn't say what one would do
I
at
understand.
a time like this. But, you know, I can assure the nation and all concerned persons in terms of the accountability and transparency that this government, you know, is addressing those matters, and I suspect that you'll begin to see some unraveling of some recourse in the matters.
Okay, all right, great, sir. What would you say would have been your office's greatest achievement possibly to date? Again, it's only been 12 months, but what are some of the things, you like to...
You said greatest. I think it has to be the question of removing us from the brink of economic disaster because of the threats posed by the AML-CFT regime. But in addition to that, I believe that in relation to the registries, the land registry, when I took over, the land registry was in a very bad state. Practitioners and public alike were always complaining about the operations of that land registry. People would recall that. And I was able to very quickly identify a person to be appointed to head that land registry. And most Guyanese would know by now that land registry has been transformed. And the business of the registry is being dispensed in a very timely and I would say efficient manner. And that in fact was said at a forum on the occasion of the opening of the new commercial registry building, which was christened by the president.
Yes.
Brigadier David Granger. And at that very session, it was revealed that the public and practitioners alike were satisfied with the operations of the land registry. Now, the deeds and the deeds and commercial registry, they come under the Minister of Legal Affairs, but they are more or less a semi-autonomous authority. And the request over time was to separate them. So that building would have been acquired before, but they hadn't moved them over. We still have problems in the sense that a year ago I was told that the connectivity with Borbis and Essequibo would be effected with respect to the commercial registry.
Yes.
That has been mired in all kinds of tendering problems and processes. And unfortunately, that hasn't been done to date. And that is a matter that I really would want to fast track. And that's a matter that we want to address. But overall, the public and the practitioners are in high praise for the performance of the commercial registry, which is physically separated from the deeds registry, which is still under the lower flat of the Supreme Court. And they're very happy. So I'm happy in that regard also.
That's a good achievement.
Now, the other questions...
Sir, before you continue, sir, I think we have a caller waiting. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Basil, in terms of the Constitution, to make some amendments, it's a very prestigious thing that those staff like Joseph Gaines and Clark and Shahabuddin and Federal. What I learned in the 1980s, that document, that Constitution, even as the receipt as in Paris, was there, and many others like your good friend Jeffrey Thomas, Robert Williams, that they was saying that, and Messiah, that the Constitution, you have to know to interpret is the interpretation. And those who did straight English and never did grammar needed to get into law, and you will find it a problem in the High Court, even with the law. So a lot of people were Dave Carbon and these things, and many things who wanted to get on the board in law, many of them back out. And I learned over years that the interpretation, you got to know to interpret that Constitution. And Mr. Messiah said you can't interpret it. There's no sense you say you drop in a paper or you become a lawyer getting in the court because you will embarrass yourself. So it's the interpretation, and you have to get to Mr. Messiah and Rashi Jackson. I mean, first when we get in,
Caller, wrap it up for me, please.
You all got to learn this thing, you all got to know grammar. And if you don't know grammar, straight English, you cannot handle the law and neither the Constitution.
Okay, thank you very much, caller.
Well, I suppose one would have to agree with the caller and in that regard. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think his issue was about based on the Constitution and constitutional reform and interpreting the Constitution. And of course, it brings another main issue, that we've dealt with in the past year or so regarding constitutional reform in Guyana.
Well, constitutional reform, was one of the planks that we had a campaign on. And a steering committee was constituted really to determine the parameters, establish a modus to move forward. And that work has been completed. You would have heard the president saying, and also the prime minister, that there couldn't be any constitutional reform unless the man in the street, every Guyanese, had been involved in the consultation process. And so that phase would have to come. The questions of what items that would be highlighted for reform, all those issues are still to be determined. But those issues would not have been within the remit of the steering committee.
Okay. All right. You touched on it earlier a bit, not specifically though. The night court. I'd like to talk about that. How soon, what is the progress? And I think you recently made some sentiments on it.
But the night court came up in relation to what has happened with the prison system and all those unfortunate deaths that had occurred. And one of the measures we in fact, a team from the executive visited with the chancellor and his team. And that was one of the proposals which emanated from that meeting, that we should address, in attempting to address the backlog, that fast and efficient approaches should be created to reduce that backlog by employing part-time magistrates. And they would have to operate after 4 o'clock. That's why they're using the term night courts.
Night courts, okay.
But that would involve an entire, the system would not be different from the courts in a normal period during the day.
Okay.
And in fact, security would obviously have to be heightened for the night courts. But that's something that is under consideration, and I trust that it could eventuate shortly.
Great. Caller, welcome.
Good afternoon to you there. I'd just like to clear one point that I read in I think it was the Times, about the opposition leader saying he spoke to Mr. Williams concerning the seating arrangement for the opposition people. I'd just like to find out whether that is so, and whether the doll that they drank caused all of them to get diarrhea and they had to leave. I just wanted to know whether that is true or not. Could Mr. Williams explain that, please? Thanks.
Thank you very much, caller. Listen for a response off air.
Well, I was somewhat surprised that the leader of the opposition would actually say something like that publicly, because he also said publicly he was dealing with the person who was responsible for organizing that event, certainly in terms of the protocols, seating arrangements, and the like, and that he had spoken with them on diverse occasions. And so I would have been surprised that if he had a problem with seating, that he would look to me, the Attorney General, to resolve that matter. I would say that I did hear him say that he was dissatisfied with the fact that only 4 of them, he and 3 others, were seated, and the rest of his members were standing in the aisle, waiting to be seated. I, in fact, then subsequently, after Mr. Nagamoto arrived with much acclaim and applause, and actually came upstairs and was seated in front.
Okay.
At that point, I believe I heard the leader of the opposition say, well, he won't be able to stay here unless his members are allowed to also be seated. And, as I said, I tried to persuade him to, have some reason, show some reason, and exhibit what he said that he wanted to convey to the Guyanese people, that at this time of our Jubilee, that they wanted to participate in the event. But it is clear that he had his own agenda. They had no intention of sitting down there with Nagamoto in front of them with all the applause that Mr. Nagamoto had. And I also believe that he would have been struck by the majesty of the arena that he would have seen when he got up and looked out on it. It was fantastic.
Probably was
And they were
overwhelmed.
not prepared to sit down and see the scenes unravel there, unfold there. And it's unfortunate. I think they came with an agenda not to really spend any time there whatsoever. And so he left. But of course, he could not have looked to me for a solution to their seating problems because I had no role whatsoever in any such arrangement.
All right. As the caller raised that, let's talk about Guyana's 50th independence. Not only the celebration, sir, but what it meant to you to see us reach these, if you want, for want of a better word, to see us reach this height in terms of 50 years of being an independent nation, and especially with the celebrations and the pomp and ceremony that you've seen thus far.
Well, I'm saying it's excellent. I think it's unparalleled. It was a great exhibition, and I'm impressed with the work done on the arena at Dublin Park. I was so impressed by the whole grandeur, of the scene and the majesty of the structure itself. And certainly the Guyanese people and the thousands who attended that night, the stands couldn't accommodate them, as you would have seen. I don't think they would ever forget what they witnessed that night. It was a pity that the opposition didn't stay to also share in that moment. But the president had this vision, I think President Granger has to be congratulated because I'm sure there were a lot of soothsayers who were saying, why are they building, why are they building something like that here now when they could have used the stadium and all that. But basically, that arena was so well suited, and people could have attended there without actually going into their pockets.
Yes.
To spend money on transportation, whether 2 times they have to connect and come. Because it was in an area people could actually walk and go to. Sophia, people in Lodge, Rhineville, North and South, East and West, the La Penitence. So it was really perfectly situated for the events, and no one had to be bussed in or any such
Came
maneuvers.
voluntarily.
And everyone, and yesterday also the float parade. And we must also mention our brothers and sisters from the diaspora. They have been showing great enthusiasm for the changes that they have witnessed in Guyana.
Yeah.
The cleanliness of the environment and almost the beauty of Georgetown that has been to a large extent restored. And we're happy that they are happy. And we are also happy that we are emerging as the country, as a destination for people who are looking for investment and who, certainly whether tourism or whether oil and gas, green energy, Ghana is the place to come to. And I think we are in a very good place at the time that we are celebrating our 50th year as a nation.
Okay, great coming from you, sir. Viewers, I just want to remind you when you're coming through, you have to turn the volumes of your television sets down. It's unfortunate, but I just had to disconnect the caller because the volume of your television is too high. You cannot hear yourself and speak to us at the same time. Again, I know this is slightly new to you because I haven't opened up the phone lines in a very long time. So you're still free to call, but of course, ensure that volume is down, or like I said, I'll be forced to disconnect the call. Attorney General, earlier I asked you about your greatest achievement in your 1 year in office. Let's talk in general, government in general, 1 year. Some persons are of the belief that there have been some missteps and some things being peddled in the media, and these things should not have happened. As a senior cabinet member also, let's talk about measures in place, measures that may be put in place to avoid what some members of the public may term as missteps and mistakes that should not be made.
Well, I'm not sure who are the members of the public. Of course, if they are the opposition members,
Not necessarily
I won't
opposition.
be able to respond to them because everything seems to be a problem for them.
Okay.
We could do nothing to please them. And I don't know the missteps that you're talking about.
General things that people may like to see fast-tracked and so on.
Well, it's only a year. I think that in that year we would have had to find our feet in the early months. We will also would have had to deal with a structure that we inherited, a 23-year-old structure. We would have inherited persons who were accustomed to operating in such a structure. We would have all inherited a resistance to change by many of those workers. And I think after a year, we could say that we at least are trying to, we've seen some change in the attitudes of the workers and perhaps a willingness to work with our government. Of course, they are under pressure to, not to necessarily cooperate as much as they would like. But we have our agenda, we have our program, we see infrastructure and education. The president even created a new Ministry of Social Cohesion, which has a pivotal role to play, because we recognize that if we were to move forward, we have to do so in an inclusive manner. And it's very important that now that we are poised to take off and to have economic opportunities that were not available before, that we have to go together with and include all Guyanese in the process. I think we have started and we have embarked on in that way. The president is an education president. Mm-hmm. He had always believed that children must attend school, but they can't learn if they're hungry, and they can't reach school in time if they're not assisted with transportation. Mm-hmm. He would give that illustration where, for example, in the hinterland, children paddle canoes to go to school, and oftentimes by the time they finish an hour or so, they're tired by the time they go and sit down in the classroom. Mm-hmm. But also in the classroom, they can't be hungry. And so that's how he evolved his B's program from 3 B's, now I think there are 5 B's. So we are doing, the things that we believe that would be relevant to taking Guyana forward. We can't go forward without education. We have to train our young people. We have to give them opportunities after they acquire their training. And so we are on the path. We have a new Ministry of Business. And, all these things are pointed and geared towards that goal. I believe, too, that we have social protection, where an effort is being made to address the ills that befall a lot of the, I would say, challenged members of our society. Mm-hmm. And we also have to take care of our workers. We had a commission of inquiry to look into that situation. I personally have been in the forefront of the struggle of the workers for living wage. And so this
so you are seeing, and sorry, I'd like to know that you have brought up the fact that even previously you were in the forefront of the struggles. Viewers, for those of you who may not know or can't remember, in the 9th Parliament, the Attorney General, of course, before he became Attorney General, was the Shadow Minister for Labor and those related matters. Have you been seeing improvement? Because yes, the report has been recently handed to the President, and we're waiting for Cabinet to review it and that sort of thing.
Also, the unions, we have sent to FITOG, the umbrella organizations, labor organizations, TUC, FITOG, and other relevant agencies.
Are you confident that the public service can get some sort of benefit, at least from the reports and the reviewing of the report?
I am confident.
Of
course, you heard the President say that it's not going to be as it was before. Uh-huh. In other words, people have to perform, so the question of merit increments and all that probably would come into play. And so it would not just be a free ride. And it's a good thing. I think he has always said that he wanted a professional
sir.
public service, and all you've seen everything is being coordinated towards those ends.
Okay.
You know.
All right. Great. Fabulous. Well, I have to begin to wrap up my conversation with the Attorney General. It's unfortunate that we didn't get much more callers, but I think they've gotten accustomed to one structure with our program. So what we'll have to do is invite the Attorney General back to Facing the Nation soon. Sir, it was a pleasure having you here.
Yes, it was a pleasure after a year to be here again. Just show you how time flies.
Yes,
And,
time flies, and I know you.
but I wish to congratulate you too
Thank you, sir.
for staying the course. I mean, you did yeoman service. In fact, you had the president here every week when he was leader of the opposition. And I believe that such efforts and endeavors played no small part in achieving the change, the necessary change in government.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank
Of
you
course,
very
viewers, this has been a conversation with the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honorable Basil Williams, who is also the chairman of one of the main parties in the coalition government, which is the People's National Congress Reform. Stay tuned. I will return after a short break. This is Facing the Nation.